do you think is it the way engineering is being pursued in India? Is it really going? Is it really the right
How it
way?
felt
And
when I was coming to IIT Indore, because I just gate crashed IIT,
Passion
right?
of underwater robotics came to be, and also what is underwater robotics?
T post for me actually, because yeah, I think people know that if you want to find Anjali, T post is the place. In the like madness of chasing our career, we quite often ignore that, and I wish that's the only thing I feel like I should have done better, like going back and thinking about my undergrad.
Yeah, so starting out with the episode, Anjali Parashar is one of those seniors who me and Shubh personally admire a lot. At IIT Indore, she seemed pretty focused at the goals she had, but still you could see her pursuing her own interests, being part of clubs, organizing events, and guiding juniors like me on surviving engineering in general. She completed her graduation from IIT Indore in 2020. Again, this was a time around COVID and an year before me and Shub graduated. And thereon, she went on to join John Deere for a brief period of time before she started her journey at MIT. She started with a master's degree in mechanical engineering there. And last year, she extended it to a PhD and is currently also working as a research assistant at MIT. Truly excelling in academics is one of the many other things Anjali knows how to nail. So we would like to welcome Anjali to our second episode of Alum Talks podcast. And yeah, Anjali, thank you so much for taking out the time today to do this with us. Before jumping on and getting started with the interesting stories and episodes from Anjali's journey, let me set up some context for this episode. So, our main goal through this episode is to collate different experiences and learnings that Anjali has had through her journey, being a part of IIT, working at John Deere, and also right now at MIT, and what it takes for one to go on to be a part of one of the best institutes in the world. We would also love to highlight some important events that happened in Anjali's lives and also some really important people behind the success from her journey from IIT, John Deere to MIT. So, yeah, I think without a further ado, let's jump right into this episode. And Shub, you can just take it away.
yeah, hi Anjali, how are you feeling today?
Hi, I'm quite excited to be the second guest of this podcast. So yes.
Thank you for making the time. So I'll start. So one thing that is really interesting about your IIT Indore story is you changing your branch from material science to mechanical. And we all know that a lot of us come with this dreams of changing the branch, that we'll study and score a very high GPA and change the branch. But it's not actually that easy and not a bed of roses. So can you walk us through how did you approach your CGPA in the first year, and how did you made your mind after an intense JE prep that you would want to study and finally change the branch?
I'd like to mention that I basically did not plan to change branch in the first place at all. I was very tired after JE, and I was like quite burnt out. And honestly, like I did not feel like I had done well in JE. Like my rank wasn't that great, and like I barely got into like MEMS IIT Indore. And so I really wanted to take it easy and not put too much pressure on myself. What my goal for my first year of college was to like sort of study different things and figure out what do I like, what is it that I would be interested in pursuing down the line in my engineering. So I took everything very seriously, and in first year your only exposure to like technical subjects is just the subjects, right? It's the coursework. So I
Yeah.
studied the physics, chemistry, all of these things very very carefully, from the perspective of like trying to understand what I can do more with these things down the line. तो मैंने सब कुछ बहुत तरीके से पढ़ा, and just as a consequence of that I ended up having a good GPA. So I never put any pressure on myself in that regard that I have to get a branch change. दूसरा मेरे केस में ऐसा हुआ कि my first semester CGPA was 907, that's it. And then second semester I got 9.4 I think, so my cumulative was 9.25. तो मुझे मेरे फ्रेंड्स ने, मेरे जो सीनियर्स थे, उन्होंने मुझे बहुत इंसिस्ट किया. मैं तो तब भी नहीं बोल रही थी कि मुझे नहीं करना ब्रांच चेंज. आई वॉज हैप्पी विद MEMS बिकॉज by the time I had also started exploring material science as a branch and what entails material science as well. When I did all the subjects, right, I really liked mechanical compared to electrical. I scored really poorly in mechanical, did really well in electrical, but I like preferred mechanical much more as a subject. तो मैंने मेरे ब्रांच चेंज की लिस्ट में क्या किया कि आई पुट मैकेनिकल एंड देन इलेक्ट्रिकल एंड देन सो दैट इंटेंशनली मैकेनिकल ही मिले. एंड देन मैंने घर पे बोल दिया कि हाँ मैकेनिकल. तो that was my branch change story basically. I was like, if I am going out of MEMS, the other place or the branch I want to be in is mechanical engineering. So in my case, as I said, luckily that worked out. I don't think from that year onwards it's still possible to like get a branch change at 9.5. So it's a bit of like luck there as well.
Hopefully, nobody from your family is going to watch it now. So I think we are
उनको
good.
मैंने बाद में बता दिया था, उनको खुद ही पता चल गया था एक्चुअली कि बिकॉज
Okay.
दे केम टू नो अबाउट द लाइक द CGPA एंड दे वर लाइक कि CGPA तो यू कुड हैव ट्राइड फॉर इलेक्ट्रिकल. फिर मैंने बोल दिया था कि हाँ लेकिन मुझे करना यही था, तो अब कुछ नहीं कर सकते.
For
Yeah.
me, most interesting thing is how you scored less in mechanical, but you had it placed above electrical. I think that is
Yeah.
something that only a few people would be doing.
हाँ, because I feel like कि first year of engineering gave me the confidence that there is a system for scoring well in academics. If I approach that system, if I study consistently, and if I really understand, then like scoring less, it doesn't matter because eventually you will get there. Eventually you'll start scoring better. So I really did not place the importance on like my marks or my GPA. I was like, मुझे मुझे सच में, and मैंने शायद पढ़ाई भी मैकेनिकल के लिए ही ज़्यादा की थी आई थिंक. इलेक्ट्रिकल तो मैंने और लाइक मी एंड प्रिया वी स्टडीड लाइक द नाइट बिफोर. हमने ऐसे, हम अभी तक वी जोक अबाउट इट, वी मेड लाइक चाय एट 4 in the morning एंड हमने पूरा एनालॉग एंड डिजिटल जो भी था वी फिनिश्ड इट लाइक इन 4-5 hours. But mechanical I got a 7 I think. But still I was like ki, there is a lot to explore here, and it might also have to do with the fact that my dad is a mechanical engineer and I was really
Okay.
like yeah, so that background was all. He's a professor by the way in mechanical engineering.
Oh
So
wow!
wo
Wow.
I always had that perspective of mechanical engineering, so maybe that's why also I was like ki, this is something I really want to study while I'm doing engineering.
So, what is it with you that makes you more inclined towards academia? Is it because of an event, or is it because of your family background? As you said, your dad is a professor. So, do you think that has affected your overall uh, interest towards academics?
I think part of the reason was definitely my family because, like the initial momentum, क्योंकि both my parents are professors, so मुझे उसकी वजह से ये मालूम था कि कॉलेज में, कोई भी कॉलेज में किस तरीके के like what kind of students come into a college and what are the different career paths different students take and what are the requirements for these different career paths. So very early on, while entering IIT Indore itself, I knew that whether I have to like give CAT or apply for like PhD or MS, there are various places where having a high GPA really helps. So I was
Hmm.
like, "Ki, if I'm not doing anything else, my perspective towards this problem was, if I'm not doing anything else with my time, then I should be studying. So like if there's something else where I'm giving my time productively, like I would say that like giving time to the clubs for instance or extracurriculars is still productive investment of time. But even there you have to be careful what are the returns out of it at some point. So I felt like कि, in the daytime for instance between like 9 in the morning till like 6 or 7 जब classes चल रही होती हैं, if I'm not doing anything useful, just sitting and loitering and wasting time in my room, I'd rather be in the class learning and listening to something. and
Yeah.
that eventually worked out well, like until a point that was the motivation. And then a point ke baad, when I started doing research, like when I started working with a professor in a lab, then like academics really helps you to like build the concepts that you need to do research and to keep going at research. So that was also one of the motivations. But I think I've always had a knack for studying, because and then here's the thing, I feel like if you need to give it a bit of time, and then when you do it you will definitely find something which is very interesting for you, which will be very captivating. And I remember, like, besides the area that I specialized in my research in my undergrad as well, मैंने उसके अलावा और बहुत सारे areas में I like studied quite extensively. Like I went well beyond the scope of the textbooks or the course that was prescribed, and just out of curiosity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that is pretty interesting. Both of your parents being professors and how that has affected your overall, I would say, awareness about knowing what works in academics. And because during my first year, I don't remember me having this perspective that, if nothing else, at least do some studies and get a good GPA so that it helps you
Hmm.
further down the line. Taking side rails from education a bit, I would like to know how being a part of a minority felt like at IIT Indore. And by minority, I mean first being a woman and then being a woman in the mechanical branch, I think is quite rare. So overall, how does it feel like to be part of a very few? And I'm sure it might have both pros and cons in some ways. More cons, I would feel. But do you think that affected you or your journey in any way?
Yeah, I think it definitely did, because I'll tell you what, like I'm so happy that we have more women now in IITs, because I have seen the change in front of my eyes. Like, for example, when I was in my first year or second year, you don't like, as a girl, like, so I was, to begin with, not a very extroverted person. Like I was not very socially outgoing in my first year. I had friends and like I had social circles and everything, but I wasn't the kind of person who would like have zero social anxiety at all, and like ready to embarrass yourself kind of a thing, you know. And there, like, if you really want to do something, if there's something you really want to try your hands at, and having a role model or someone you admire who has done it before, someone like you, really helps. And in my
Yeah.
case, there was just one girl who was in her third year at that time, जब मैं first year में थी, खुशबू दीदी. She was the only person who had been doing all of these things that I wanted to do. So I was just like looking at her, and every time I felt a hesitation, I would either go and talk to her, or I would just be like, yeah, she's doing it, so I should also try, kind of. But I feel for a lot of other things that I wanted to do, but I didn't do, this kind of like lack of representation really stopped me, kind of. And it built a
Hmm.
hesitation, like coding, for instance. And you don't see that many like women coders on campus because women ही नहीं है. So like that thing also comes into the picture. Yeah. So like and like the pros are that you are a very tightly knit community, because every year has like 6, 9, 20 women, so you all know each other very well. But then the cons are that it's hard to make friends, because उन 20 लड़कियों में you have to find friends, which is very hard because you all have diverging personalities. Socially, that can be
Yeah.
very interesting and challenging. And speaking from the perspective of like mechanical engineering, I think was very interesting. I feel like there were definitely places where it was quite challenging. मुझे याद है एक बार in the machine shop, the operator didn't allow me to operate the lathe because he said that he said my hair was tied in a plate and all okay, but he was like, no, your hair will come in the machine, so I can't let you. And I think there were like guys around me who were like more shabby with their hair and all, but they were like freely allowed to operate. So these small things happened. But also, like, interestingly enough, there are also people who sort of like see that there aren't that many like you, and they root for you. And that is also very quite unforgettable. Like, I'd like to mention Kazi sir from mechanical engineering. The first day of like our class, I think in third year or second year, the machining class used to take, he came in and he saw there are three girls in the class. So there were three girls in my batch, and he said, I see that there are three girls, and he said it in a like a sort of like a motivating tone, and he said that he's happy that there are like finally more girls in mechanical engineering because the year before mine there were zero. So when the boys started laughing when they heard this, so and sir was just like, "You guys are laughing right now, but wait when the placements come and when the fourth year comes, these girls will do much better than you guys." Stuff like that. So I feel, and he always till the end of that course, he remembered all three of us, and he used to take our questions, our doubts very seriously. So like he would often like encourage us to speak up as well, which I really admired. So I will always think it gives you a very special perspective to be a minority. You also begin to understand what it feels like to be another kind of minority in a situation like this. You begin to be more empathetic about it. So overall, I'm quite grateful, but also happy that now there are more women. When I was in my fourth year, I saw a huge rise of like girls in coding and in tech clubs especially, which I really liked. So I think now we're like going in the right direction with that.
Yeah, because after your year, I think I was in mechanical and we only had one girl.
Hmm.
So I guess it was little bit up and down until they started having more seats for women, and that really helped having a better ratio.
I agree. Yes, yes, for sure. And I think that has also like facilitated better communication between like girls across years. So now I get like requests for like reviewing SOP or something from like some girl in mechanical who'd be like in second or first year, and I really like that they have come to know about me from like Niyati or some other girl that. So there's a good chain of communication there as well. So that's also
Yeah.
nice.
We
Yeah,
hope to establish that communication among much more students, and hopefully after this episode you will have much more LinkedIn requests.
yeah, shifting gears a bit, now I would like to touch upon the research work that you did and how that came to be. You worked at IIT Madras, and you worked on underwater gliders there, and also you did a product design internship at University of Southampton in UK, and also your bachelor thesis was around underwater robotics. So I was just curious of how this passion of underwater robotics came to be, and also what is underwater robotics.
So within field robotics, you can classify the vehicles that you see around as like aerial, ground, or underwater. So aerial robots are like autonomous vehicles deployed for aerial maneuvers. Ground vehicles are just like easier, and they're used in like factories and warehouses and so on. Underwater robots, where they come up is like they appear in the form of like design wise, they appear in the form of like submarines or so, gliders and so on, and they are used for like going into places where it's risky to send humans. So that is one of the main like areas where you would use an underwater robot actually. And I started working with Professor Shanta Kumar Mohan in my second year, and the first project I worked on with him was in rehabilitation robotics actually. So there was some like design and experimental work there, a little bit of that, and a little bit of control to be done. I enjoyed that. And then through his recommendation, I went to IIT Madras at the end of my second year for doing an internship. And there, the project that I was assigned to was an underwater robotics, the underwater glider that you mentioned. So the work over there for me as a second year undergrad was really just to learn the ropes and understand the fundamentals and build a dynamic model for an underwater robot. And I did that, and I really enjoyed that process very much. And the reason I enjoyed it was because the challenge in underwater robots, as opposed to the rehabilitation robots, which are more manipulator like,
Mhm.
appears because of the environmental interactions. Like you're deploying it at underwater, so you have to be very careful about the design and how the drag and lift forces are going to appear, calculating them. There are lots of interesting problems that come up in that zone. So when I came back, I told my professor that I really enjoyed this internship on underwater robotics. Do we have something going on in that direction in our lab? So he mentioned that there was a PhD student who was working there in this area, and he recommended me to start working with him. And I worked on it from like the starting of my third year till the end of my, I think, seventh semester. So like roughly 1.5 years, I guess. And in that duration, I like we worked on a paper together. We published that paper in a journal, and we I also chose a topic in that research as a part of my BTech thesis project. So that was like how I sort of like started underwater robotics, and then I wanted to do masters and research to learn more about robotics as a whole. There were a lot of like open problems there which were like very hazy and vague to me at that point, that I really wanted to get clarity on. So I started like, okay, I want to do masters now, kind of.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. I mean, like you were saying, how the dynamics and the environment also has like a lot of impact. Now that I think of it, it makes sense that if a robot is deployed in water, there's like whole range of other things that you need to consider, which seems pretty interesting. And I think, as you mentioned, your interest moved from like the design to the controls. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty interesting to know, because and I imagine that you test these things in actual water. Is that right?
Yeah, so with our like we designed a prototype, we could never like build it because of COVID. So
Oh yeah.
like yeah, by the time we were like thinking about it, COVID happened already, and this was in my final semester. But so our prototype we could never like deploy it underwater. I have seen underwater robots like real time build test, design build test projects at MIT here. That was very interesting for me.
And this brings me to the next question, which is around your PhD. So, did you have this notion of doing PhD maybe towards the end of your like undergrad, or maybe even right from the
I
start?
think not. I would say like masters came out to be like a goal at the beginning. Like towards the end of my second year, when I was deciding what I want to do after my like undergrad, I thought of doing a masters, and there what I saw was that you need to have some research experience to write a convincing SOP. That's what I learned. And so I was like, okay, I have to do research, I have to work with professors on projects to show some experience, because as an undergrad, I don't have a lot of work experience. So what else will I show on my SOP? So I started doing research because of that, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed the process of doing research, and so much so that I decided that I want this to be like a part of my masters, even when I'm doing masters as well. So like intentionally, when I was applying for masters programs at that point, PhD was a consideration, but I was still hesitant to like completely dive into PhD, because I would say like that period of working in a lab for like a year and a half and a couple of years with different people gave me a taste of like what actual PhD would look like as well. So I really wanted to take more time to decide for myself, this is really what I want to do. And so I decided that I'm first going to go for a research based masters, and then gradually on the go figure out if I still want to do a PhD. If not, I have an option to like quit and go for a job at any point. So that's how I planned it out to be. And luckily things are like pretty flexible like that at MIT, that if at the end of my masters I wanted to just just end it there, that was totally an option as well for me.
Sure. And the next question I have is, like, when you first received that email from MIT, was it a no-brainer for you to, okay, now I'm going to MIT, or were there other schools at that point as well which you were considering?
Yeah, so I remember I was just so shocked. I was like for a whole month, I was like, have I received a scam email? Okay, so around that time, there was this journalist. I don't remember which channel she was affiliated to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She received this fake email, like email professorship offer from Harvard.
Oh
Okay, like
yes,
some
I remember that.
right
Yeah.
I think she was
school of
Nidhi Razdan, if I
yeah,
remember
yeah, yeah, yeah.
correctly.
I think so, yeah. Like School
Yeah.
of Journalism or something. Later on it turned out, and I think NDTV, I think, and the channel like publicized that a lot, that she's joining Harvard and everything. She had resigned already, and she came to know it's all a scam. And that this happened around the same time when my MIT offer came in. So I kept like thoroughly like looking at the logo and everything to make sure it's legit. And then finally actually at the beginning I wasn't quite sure, because so this is why I'm so like happy that that I am in a position that I can help other people. if in the future we have more people at MIT, which we already do, like there's a junior Arnav, he's joining MIT Mechie as well. And if you're coming here, you would know that at MIT everybody is like fully sponsored. So like funding and like invest, like the monetary aspect of it is a no-brainer. Had I known this early on when the decision came in, it would have been a no-brainer for me as well. I would have definitely joined MIT, but at that point money was a big consideration for me. So I had also applied to a lot of scholarships for that reason. So I was being very careful. I was also exploring other options, and my main goal was like a good combination of a good school of my choice and like not overspending on the like budget and like not taking out a very heavy loan or something. So fortunately it all worked out because at MIT I got a like a research assistantship when I joined in, so I didn't have to pay out of pocket. But yeah, at the beginning I was thinking of CMU actually. So CMU was another school I was really interested to join because CMU has a really good school of robotics actually. So I think I had like I was quite like convinced that yeah, I want to go to CMU. But then I think the like at CMU I did not get a full like support, financial support. At MIT I got that instead, so then it was easier to make a decision here.
Also, I would like to highlight the scholarships that you mentioned. I think I remember reaching out to you as well on like the ways I can go about it. And one thing that I didn't know before I spoke to you was there are a lot of scholarship within India as well for people going abroad. Like I think KC Mahindra is one such scholarship, which again I didn't know, and a lot of people who also like I talk to who are planning on masters, I do recommend them to check out these other scholarships which like some Indian organizations provide for people going abroad. Yeah, and one final thing, one final question from my side before we move on to the next section would be, what was your first day at MIT like? You entered the campus, and how was that?
It was such a haze because I was like jet lagged, like anything. But on a serious note, I think it's a long walk. One thing Boston has taught me is like just walking a lot.
So, moving on to a slightly different but related tangent. So, how does one go about deciding between research versus doing a job, especially right after their undergraduation? And because for folks who are listening to this and confused between the two, do you have a way to figure this out? Or and maybe along the way, if you can also highlight the major differences between the two, as you have had the flavor of both. Your
That's a very interesting question. I would suggest by exploring a bit of both actually. So through BTP you do get a flavor of like research, but then also it's a little late in the picture in the sense that you do it in your seventh semester. So if you get an opportunity, if research is something that's on your mind, I would say maybe try a little bit of it before your BTP starts, and then you can potentially also merge it to be in your BTP, which is what a lot of folks do who do research before BTP. But it also helps because even when you're sitting for like industry internships or industry placements, your in-house research experience counts a lot. So especially
yeah.
for mechanical engineering, the difference between research and what is expected as a part of your job in mechanical core is not like too large actually. So doing research can actually open more doors for you because there might be some specialized roles that they might be looking for, like companies might be looking for, and there if you have a research experience it's very helpful. Like that's what happened with me in John Deere. Like when they were interviewing me, they needed a person for like a robotics project actually, and it helped that I had
Okay.
been working on robotics for like 2 years, so I knew a lot about it. So
Yeah.
they so like my point here is that you don't have to like, it's not like paddling in two boats at the same time. You can do one thing and that will complement your industry search as well. And let's say you're at that stage where you have like a placement offer, and you have like either a PhD offer or a master's offer, or you're thinking about whether to apply for one as well. So the way I would go about that situation is that um, keep your pros and cons in mind. For me, when I was doing my job, I would have first of all done that job regardless of like whether COVID happened or not. So the way it worked out for me was that I end of my graduation, COVID happened. I deferred my admit to MIT by a year, and I worked in John Deere at that time. I would have worked during that 1 year anyway, because I was quite burnt out after undergrad, actually, frankly speaking. So in a way, my stint at John Deere actually motivated me even more to do a PhD, because like I realized at that point that even down the line, the kind of industry roles I want to pursue, if at all, would be research inclined. So I think it's a question of like, are you interested in more engineering side of things, or are you interested in more like researchy side of things, which will become which will become clear to you if you do research yourself and you see how
Yeah.
you feel after it. If you feel like you still want to keep doing it, because there's a lot of ambiguity, there's a lot of like, you're chasing an unknown thing in research, whereas in work, it's a pretty focused environment. There is a set of deliverables, there's a set of target you have to meet, you have to make something work, and the goal there is not to create something new. The goal there is primarily to like bring profit to to the team. So money is the driving force there. So do a bit of both, I would say, if you can, and you like use this guideline to sort of like assist your decision making process as to which side do you like being on.
Yeah. And adding on to that, I think you have outlined it pretty well. I did not really pursue any research project while at IIT Indore, but at my stint at ZS, I got a chance to work with a client who was himself a PhD in biostats, and we worked on a project together, which ultimately got published. So while working with him, I did realize that this is something of interest. I like the overall idea of being very focused and doing something for the sake of science and not just to get a particular type of outcome and then changing your whole approach a number of
Hmm.
times to really get that outcome. So at the time I thought that maybe I should have done a lot more during my first or second year, at least did one or two research project, because that really helped me be more focused, be more aware of the details that I was generally like ignoring during my job. So I think to sum up, somebody at IIT should try their hands on at least a good project in their first or second year, and maybe do more industry based internships as well. And then when you have experiences of the both, you will have a better chance of figuring out what is better for you.
Yeah, like I would say that the space to innovate and the space to like sort of create is different in industry versus in like research, basically. So you got to figure it out for yourself. Which space do you like being more a part of, kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure this will help a lot of students in making a decision, and I hope they take a right call. Another aspect of being in such a competitive field as yours, and of course, being at a place like MIT, is balancing between your health, family, career, and personal life. And generally, when we talk to people like through in this setting of a podcast or any official setting, we only explore the goods and the successes, but not the consequences of the hard work that has gone behind. And so for you, can you touch a little bit on what were those sacrifices that you had to make, and how did you strike a balance between everything?
Yeah, it's such an important question. I feel like in the like madness of chasing our career, we quite often ignore that. And I wish that's the only thing I feel like I should have done better, like going back and thinking about my undergrad, because I think everything else that came out of my undergrad, I'm very happy and satisfied about it, like personal life, professional life wise. But I wish I was more careful of like my mental and physical well-being, and keeping check with myself of like, am I doing okay, am I really liking this, and do I need to take it slow versus fast, kind of. So because we are quite like we are driving our process based on like a lot of external stimuli. So we are depending our decision making on, oh, is everyone else around me doing this particular thing at this particular time or not, instead of like,
Exactly.
is this what I really want to be doing, am I understanding what I'm doing, is it making sense to me or not. So that is definitely, and I think it comes as a consequence of like, being at a like, going through JE and like being through that competitive environment, you get so used to it that you can't think otherwise, actually. So coming to MIT actually helped me start thinking differently, because like I think even after JE, I still felt like, a little bit of like insecurity in terms of, oh, what if like I'm just good enough to get into good places, but never really good enough to make the best out of it. That's how I felt when I was coming to IIT Indore, because or like I just gate crashed IIT, right? So I was quite insecure about it. But then, like throughout my college, I grew more confident, and the reason I grew more confident in myself was because I was really like taking decisions that seemed right to me, like from the very beginning. Like the decision of not taking electrical. I'm not saying it wouldn't have worked out for me if I had done that, but I'm happy that I listened to myself and took mechanical based on my personal interest. And small decisions, I kept doing that throughout my college. Like second year, I was quite, again at the end of my first year I had done a lot of studying, and I was quite a little bit tired of it as well. So I was like, it's okay, we can take it a little slow in second year. So second year first semester was a like I took it a bit easy. And in my first year I hadn't explored any like clubs or extracurriculars or anything like that. So in my second year first semester I spent more time doing that, like exploring what extracurricular avenues are in college and so on. And then I kept escalating versus going slow on various things, various combinations of things, be it extracurriculars or research or academics, to sort of like keep myself in check and be like, am I doing okay? That's about it. That just keep in check with yourself, and make sure that you're eating well, sleeping well, and speaking with your family. That is the most important thing. And you're surrounded by people who root for you always, and who take care of you, who take good care of you. That is very important for your like well-being and striking a balance with whatever is going on.
So moving on to the part two of this podcast, where we dive deep into some topics of interest which we think will be relatable to the audience listening to us, be it students or people in their early careers. And this is personally our favorite section of the podcast as well, where it's more informal, where we are just having this discussion. So, starting out with the first theme that we want to highlight upon, generally in professional life there's always this conversation between width and depth. By that I mean, in initial years people generally tend to explore a wide range of things before deciding on what to specialize in. Now, on the contrary, I feel in when it comes to research, depth is what really matters, even at the starting phases. For example, even in your project, I'm sure you had to go through a lot of research papers just on one single topic and dive deep into it. So, just to start off with, how do you think one, while pursuing research, should strike a balance between exploration and also getting very deep into topics?
Like I imagine my trajectory, and that is an advice I would give to others as well, is that of like a funnel kind of. So you start out by exploring a lot of different things, and at that stage, sure, you have to go into a little bit of depth, but
Mm.
not too much. Just understand the bigger problem first. Understand what kind of problem solving skills do you have, or do you like, or what kind of interests do you have. Are you more obsessed with like different kinds of algorithms and how to like get a task done, or are you more interested with the application itself? Even though most of research is about taking a deep dive, sometimes if you're taking such a deep dive, you forget where you started like from, and like what are you trying to solve in the first place. So it is very important to keep having a recall of like, yeah, this was the original problem that I was trying to solve. And then going out of your area to see how other people who have a very contrasting approach to solving this problem might be very helpful as well. And like this is a very research specific advice, I think. I'm not sure if it works well otherwise as well. But something to note is, for example, I was in my first year of masters, I was reading a paper. We really liked that paper, and it was published in like a machine learning journal. And it was a really celebrated paper and all of that. A little bit later, we found another paper that had been published 3 or 4 years before, that had a very like it had a pretty similar approach, but it was published in a power systems journal instead.
Oh,
So the machine learning community completely missed out on this paper,
oh.
because it's not really within their scope of like papers that they'd be looking at. And so yeah, and I remember we like I think so these kind of things keep happening is my point. And so it is important to sort of like abstract your problem and say what are other applications this problem can have and how would other people be going about solving them. So this is an interesting exercise to keep the exploration versus like zooming in balance basically.
I think because I at ZS I have a consulting experience of 2 years, and generally there people are taught to explore the width as well, because consulting gives you a good starter into a lot of industries, and you can spend like 3 years, 4 years, or even 5 6 years to first get to know a lot of diverse domains before really diving deep into one particular domain. But the thesis behind this question was, you can't really do masters in mechanical engineering and then think, oh, I don't want to do this, I want to pivot to something totally different. So I think the opportunity cost is much high in terms of specialization in masters. In a job you can anyway do an MBA, pivot to something totally different, but that might not be the case with research, is what my guess is. But you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think yes. So which is why I would say that the exercise of like gradually funneling down, eliminating options as you are going about your undergrad is very crucial to spotting the right thing you want to do your research in. As much as I say
Hmm.
that, I would also like to add that like for me, by the end of my fourth year, I was quite convinced that this is what I want to be doing research in, kind of. But at the same time, it happens quite often that people realize it pretty late that they don't really like what they're doing and they would like to switch to a completely different domain. And the good thing about research is the habit or practice of doing research is the same or similar regardless of which field you're doing research in. So even if you are pivoting to a completely different area altogether, it still is like a valuable experience. So like the product design work that I did in in University of Southampton, that was not very related to what I do right now. In fact, like much of what I
Hmm.
did in my undergrad, I would say, is not super related to what I'm doing right now. So
Hmm.
my pivot has been more gradual and not super drastic in terms of like, no, I don't want to do like thermodynamics, I want to do robotics. It wasn't that drastic. But I will say that, for instance, in SOPs, I always encourage people to also like highlight things that went wrong for them, or things that they did not like as a part of their experience. Instead of just talking about like awards and accolades and achievements, also talk about what didn't really work out for you and why, to give the other person an insight, the reader an insight about your interests. And for also, this is also a good self-reflection opportunity for you as to what about that specific industry, like that specific sector or that specific area of research, did not really appeal to you. So it is possible to like switch and pivot while in research as well. The process looks slightly different, but I will say that you will never go wrong if you are gradually like taking it slow and steady and then gradually funneling down. Some people start specializing very early on, like in their second year, whatever they are doing. If they are lucky, they will really like what they're doing and they will keep doing it for the rest of their college. If not, then I have seen some people struggle to come out of it because they're like, we already have like two papers or one internship in this domain, but now I want to do my master's in this domain. What do I do now? Which is not a problem, by the way. So know that also, like, I think here there's a personal aspect of like, you should be okay being a complete beginner at something, because in research and in masters as well, even if it's a non like a research masters, there will be a lot of places where you'll be a complete newbie and you have to learn from scratch and then build your skill set. As long as you're okay with that learning process of like being completely new and starting from scratch, this switching thing doesn't really like matter much. But the I guess the exploration versus zooming in thing, that gets taken care of if you are at least exploring enough at the beginning. So make use of your first 2 or 3 years of engineering. They're very crucial because at that time you don't have many expectations. There's no internship interview that you have to prepare for in second year. You can use that time to actually figure out what you want to do.
I think on a tangent, the part that you mentioned of how your applications also help you reflect, I think I've related a lot to that because I remember there were few scholarship applications which were due way before the actual graduate applications, but just the application process makes you teaches you a lot about yourself, just with the questions that they ask. Like, they're very comprehensive, where you actually need to think. Of course you can have general answers, but it's actually when you think about those answers in depth, you realize where you're actually coming from, and do you really want to do this masters or not. And I mean, I would say if you're still in that mindset, maybe just give one or two applications and then see what your answers to that questions are. If they're genuine enough, then there you have your answer, that you actually want to do research, and at least it'll teach you a lot about yourself. And I think, Shubh, even you can add on to what would your ideal summer be in like first year, like if you're given a chance to go back.
I think mine would be really taking, I think thinking about what I want to do. I think I did not think much, to be very frank. I actually don't really remember what I was doing in my first year summers because I did not plan it out. And I'm not saying that, really plan down every day, but as a larger goal, that what would you like to achieve? So you have experienced 1 year at IIT Indore. What did you achieve? Where is it that you're going? I think those directional awareness of what is it that's really happening with you. I think if I had that maturity, I think that would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
Like I was also mostly like loitering away only. First year, summer, I was chilling. So like I'm not saying that just work, work, work.
Yeah,
None of us are
exactly.
saying that actually. I think yeah, right. We're just saying like more. I think Shubh is right, and like, do you have a directional awareness of where you're headed? Kind of that is
Right.
very important. And also like
Yeah.
I'd like to really like mention like Nemath's point is very right about like if you're confused about SOPs and like MS or not and all these things, writing out these answers and SOPs is a very good way of figuring it out for yourself, which is something I'd like to like use this opportunity to mention specifically, because I see a lot of like people, they in the haste try to sort of do this copy paste thing sometimes, where they would just like there's a template for an SOP, just fill in your details in there and then let's just send it out. And that more often than not, it doesn't work. Even if you get an
Yeah.
admit, I don't think you're going to be able to make the best out of it for yourself in that situation. So I always believe that to a certain extent, the process is in some way indicative of the goal like that you're trying to achieve. So enjoying the process is like a metric for whether or not the goal is suitable for you as well. So yeah.
I think to sum up, spend 20,000 rupees on two US master schools applications and then you would have it figured out.
Yeah, that is true as well. and
Yeah.
and better spend like
So
20,000 there than like a few like lakhs
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
regret it later, right? So
Yes. That's
totally, yeah.
yeah. Some of I think do yeah. That's the best part. Yeah.
So the theme to I think that brings us to an end to a very interesting question, and we also would like to explore another theme. So this is more around engineering, and I think we all can contribute something here as well. So do you think is it the way engineering is being pursued in India? Is it really going? Is it really the right way? And because one thing is our obsession with jobs and higher CTCs, but the bigger issue is the lack of scientific temperament in general. And therefore, even when good candidates land to premier institutions like IITs, they don't really contribute to their field much. And as a result, overall, we see India lagging much behind in terms of technological innovation and research. So now that you have seen another country, another pretty good institution, do you have some idea as to why are these things the way it is in India, and what is it that we can do to improve? As in, like, as a country, not just the three of us.
yeah. I think to begin with, like one aspect of like being in the US and doing research here, which is a very refreshing change for me, was the span of collaboration. I think research and specifically scientific pursuit is very incomplete if you do not collaborate substantially. Having an external input and a feedback of like whether you're not, or like getting some kind of feedback from like a school of thought that is not in a very close proximity to yours is very important. So here I see in the US, across the US, people collaborate all like within the country, but they also collaborate across different nations and countries. So like there are some collaborations with India, but more so with like China and Europe and other places as well. Like Europe and I think US, they collaborate a lot actually. So for that reason, it's very easy for even the European researchers to like make a transition into the American academia and the other way around. So that is one thing that I'd like to mention. The other difference that I notice is that the um, I think in our education system in general, the hierarchy and respecting the hierarchy is quite like ingrained as a part of our mentality. Now it is it's debatable whether or not it's really needed, but I think I can definitely see the benefit of not having a strict hierarchy or like a strict structure in like the advantage of not having one in research over here at MIT. And I think so maybe revising this whole architecture, thinking about it from a fresh perspective, might also help. But there again, I think having the input of like people who are already in this thing to kind of know where are they coming from, why is this system in place, because Indian academic system, if you think about it, which is like, I at least in my mind correlate like academia is a whole part of like scientific innovation, right, driving scientific innovation. So um, Indian academic system is very different from like how it works in the US. If you were to compare the two countries, kind of. So it would be interesting to like sit down with a professor at some point, ask them why is it that things are this way, what's the reason or rationale behind it, and is there a scope for change here? What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I think the point that you mentioned about collaboration, that even from my experience at Georgia Tech, I've seen that a lot, even with, along with other universities across the globe, even with industry. I feel like there's a lot of collaboration, like with, like the top companies out there, and like, for example, even in my case, when I was working as a research assistant, I was directly working with Intel, for example, which I don't think I would get such experience back in India. But yeah, I just wanted to add that how I relate to the collaboration part that you were talking about, be it universities or even the industry.
I think another aspect is the focus as a country. I think India is much behind in a lot of other terms like the per capita income, and a lot of people do not really have the basic needs. So as a country, we can't go much into just research because you need a lot of funding for research, and
Yeah.
a lot of our money is right now going into helping the poorest of the sections, and only the colleges and the academia cannot do something on their own unless they have the resources and the money to do it. And similarly, that culture comes into the students from the teachers, from the professors. If they do not have the resources, how would a student in his or her first year go out of the way and really pursue something? So I think it is changing. We do see a lot of more research papers now, lot more research now, a lot more collaboration now. But yeah, it's still quite lagging. I think we have had a pretty interesting and deep discussion around two themes that we thought would be very relevant for the audience and also for us. And I hope people who are listening to this are not bored yet, and with all the nerdy talk that we have done until yet. Uh, so now to lighten up the mood, we have some fun questions for you, Anjali, and would just like to know whatever answer you have on top of your head. First one is T Post or Aladdin's.
T post for me actually, because yeah, I think people know that if you want to find Anjali, T post is the place to go. So
Yeah. And what's your go-to guilty pleasure right now?
like I like to listen to a lot of like rap music these days, like the Indian, like I like to listen to the Indian rap artists actually, not Indian but like desi hip hop, basically like Pakistani Indian, all of these people. And some of it is really nice, but my guilty pleasure is like there are some really cringe raps also out there, so I listen to them and then I bore my brother to death by sending him those things as well. So
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. One thing that you miss the most about IIT Indore.
um I really miss the sunsets for some reason because it's very cloudy in Boston always. The Boston sky like sunsets are sometimes good, but I really whenever someone puts a photo of like the IIT Indore sunset, really miss that. And tea post, man, I really miss chai about India in general. You don't get chai. It's very sad. Yeah.
And my last one is any hobbies that you miss not being able to catch up on.
Yeah, I think I quit debating like a long time ago, even while in college, and I really miss that even now, actually. So I really like sometimes I look back at the photos someone sends me of like what I would be in a debate, and I really miss the heat of it, actually. So,
I,
so yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
think my brother has mentioned this to me that my hobbies are also very nerdy. So he's like, you're a very unrelatable character for a large large proportion of humanity. I don't have cool hobbies like Nemath, no, like Photoshop and all.
Oh no, no.
Bird
He's
My
doing
watching and
you're
all.
doing boxing these days or something, right? I saw on LinkedIn.
oh yeah, I'm trying out, just trying random things.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, what I'm curious on is something that you want to be good at right now.
I want to be good at. I'd like to learn an instrument, and yeah, also like paint better, like comics, like learn how to draw caricatures
Oh
is something
wow,
I'd really, yeah,
see, that's cool, right?
yeah.
What's your ideal, if you had an ideal routine, or maybe you already have one? What's your ideal day-to-day routine? Would look like, or is like?
Yeah, would look like would be a better answer, like a makeup for a better answer. So, like one that is not sleep deprived, literally just 8 hours of sleep, wake up early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and then have homemade food, and yeah, work 9 to 6, and then use the rest of the time for yourself. That would be amazing, actually. So,
Uh,
yeah, it sounds quite boring, but like it gets so busy during PhD, it's like very hard to even keep up with the basics. So, just really that, actually.
yeah, I can relate to the morning, waking up at 6 and getting some good food. I miss that a lot.
Yeah.
Boston or Indore?
Okay. I think work Boston, but then food Indore, man. Like I just keep watching reels of like Mani Puri and everything. I'm going homesick because of that only.
And like finally, what's the best advice that you have ever received that you would want to pass on to juniors and also to me and Shubh?
Interesting. So the best advice that I've received, this is more in like research context.
Mhm.
Like the advice was given to me in a research context, but I think it's pretty like widely applicable. At some point in my master's research, my advisor, Dr. Anuradha Annaswamy, she's a research scientist at MIT. She like I was trying to prove a theorem, and it was taking me a lot of time to prove that theorem, and I was just not getting anywhere. And one day she was like, she explained it to me very nicely, and she said that the reason we were not able to crack it is because I was getting way too involved with the technicalities of the math. Like I was really scared, like I had this like internal phobia of like long math theorems and proofs and all these things. So maybe I was getting too involved in the technicalities. And she said this to me that math is just a language, and the real creativity does not lie in those variables and those long equations. The real creativity lies in the idea. So do you have a picture in your head of what are you trying to prove? And then the math will flow automatically. And since then, that has always been my strategy. Like whenever I get stuck and it starts to look very messy and dirty, I just take a step back and I ask myself, do I really have a picture in my head of what I'm trying to go for? And I think this is applicable outside of just math, because in any domain, if you know what the bigger picture is, the tools will make it work for you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that was it. That was all that we
Yes.
have. I would have ideally loved that we talk more and more about a lot of other things as well. But this brings us to an end to this episode. And through this journey of recording this with you, there are a lot of things that both Nemath and I are taking away. And we hope that the audience too would learn a lot of new things, build a new perspective that helps them in their career. So thank you so much for making out the time to do this, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, guys. And it's such a pleasure to see you both after such a long time. So, yeah.